In these recollections, Shlyapnikov, the chief figure in the Petrograd center of the Bolsheviks, tells how he refused the demands of the workers for firearms or even revolvers, sending them to the barracks to get them. He wished in this way to avoid bloody clashes between workers and soldiers, staking everything on agitation, that is, on the contest of the soldiers by work and example. We know of no other testimony which confirms or refutes this statement of a prominent leader of those days, a statement which testifies to sidestepping rather than foresight. It would be simpler to confess that the leaders had no firearms. There is no doubt that the fate of every revolution at certain point is decided by a break in the disposition of the army. Against a numerous, disciplined, well-armed, and ably led military force, unarmed or almost unarmed masses of the people cannot possibly gain a victory. But no deep national crisis can fail to affect the army to some extent. Thus, along with the conditions of a truly popular revolution, there develops a possibly not, of course, a guarantee of its victory. However, the going over of the army to the insurrection does not happen of itself, nor as a result of mere agitation. The army is heterogeneous, and its antagonistic elements are held together by terror or discipline. On the very eve of the decisive hour, the revolutionary soldiers do not know how much power they have or what influence they can exert. The working masses, of course, are also heterogeneous, but they have immeasurably more opportunity for testing their ranks in the process of preparation for the decisive encounter. Strikes, meetings, demonstrations are not only acts in the struggle, but also measures of its force. The whole mass does not participate in the strike. Not all the strikes are ready to fight. In the sharpest moments, the most daring appear in the streets. The hesitant, the tired, the conservative sit at home. Here a revolutionary selection takes place of itself. People are sifted through the sieve of events. It is otherwise with the army. The revolutionary soldiers, sympathetic, wavering, or antagonistic, are all tied together by a compulsory discipline whose threads are held up to the last moment in the officer's fist. The soldiers are told off daily into first and second files. But how are they to be divided into rebellious and obedient? The psychological moment when the soldiers go over to the revolution is prepared by a long molecular process, which, like the processes of nature, has its points of climax. But how determine at this point? A military unit may be wholly prepared to join the people, but may not receive the needed stimulus. The revolutionary leadership does not yet believe in the possibility of having the army on its side, and lets slip the victory. After this repentant but unrealized immunity, a reaction may seize the army. The soldiers lose the hope which flared in their breasts. They bend their necks again to the yoke of discipline, and in a new encounter with the workers, especially at a distance, will stand opposed to the insurrection. In this process, there are many elements imponderable or difficult to weigh. Many cross-current collectives collective suggestions and auto-suggestions. But out of this complicated web of material and psychic forces, one conclusion emerges with irrefutable clarity. The more the soldiers in their mass are convinced that the rebels are really rebelling, that this is not a demonstration after which they will have to go back on the barracks and report, that this is a struggle to the dead, that the people may win if they join them, and that this winning will not only guarantee impunity but alleviate the lot of all. The more they realize this, the more willing they are to turn aside their bayonets or go over with them to the people. In other words, the revolutionists can create a break in the soldiers' mood only if they themselves are actually ready to seize the victory at any price whatever, even the price of blood. At the highest determination never can or will remain unarmed. The critical hour of contact between the pushing crowd and the soldiers who bar their way has its critical minute. That is when the gray barrier has not yet given way, still holds together shoulder to shoulder, but already wavers, and the officer, gathering this last strength of will, gives the command, fire. The cry of the crowd, the yell of terror and dread, drowns the command, but not wholly. The rifles waver, the crowd pushes. Then the officer points the barrel of his revolver at the most suspicious soldier. From the decisive minutes now stands out a decisive second, the death of the boldest soldier, to whom the others have involuntarily looked for guidance. A shot into the crowd by a corporal from the dead man's rifle, and the barrier closes. The guns go off of themselves, scattering the crowd into the alleys and backyards. But how many times since 1905 it has happened otherwise? At the critical moment when the officer is ready to pull the trigger, a shot from the crowd, which has its Kayurovs and Shagurins forestalls him. This decides not only the flat of the street skirmish, but perhaps the whole day or the whole insurrection. The task which Shyapnikov set himself, or project the workers from hostile clashes with the troops by not giving firearms to the insurrectionists, could not in any case be carried out. Before it came to these clashes with the troops, innumerable clashes had occurred with the police. The street fighting began with the disarming of the hated pharaohs, the revolvers passing into the hands of the rebels. The revolver by itself is a weak, almost toy-like weapon against the muskets, rifles, machine guns, and cannon of the enemy. But are these weapons genuinely in the hands of the enemy? To settle this question, the workers demanded arms. It was a psychological question, but even in an insurrection, psychic processes are inseparable from material ones. The way to the soldier's rifle leads through the revolver taken from the pharaoh. The feelings of the soldiers in those hours were less active than those of the workers, but not less deep. Let us recall again that the garrison consisted mainly of reserve battalions many thousand strong, destined to fill up the ranks of those at the front. These men, most of them fathers of families, had the prospect of going to the trenches when the war was lost and the country ruined. They did not want war. They wanted to go home to their farms. They knew well enough what was going on. They knew well enough what was going on and at court, and had not the slightest feeling of attachment to the monarchy. They did not want to fight with Germans. They still less with the Petrograd workers. They hated the ruling class of the capital, who had been having good time during the war. Among them were workers with a revolutionary past, who knew how to give a generalized expression to all these moods. To bring the soldier from a deep but as yet hidden revolutionary discontent to over mutinous action, or at least first to mutinous refusal to act, that was the task. On the third day of the struggle, the soldiers totally ceased to be able to maintain a benevolent neutrality toward the insurrection. Only accidental fragments of what happened in those hours along the line of contact between workers and soldiers have come down to us. We heard how yesterday the workers complained passionately to the Pavlovsky regiment about the behavior of its training squad. Such scenes, conversations, reapproaches, appeals were occurring in every corner of the city. The soldiers had no more time for hesitation. They were compelled to shout yesterday, and they will be again today. The workers will not surrender or retreat. Under fire, they are still holding their own, and with them their woman wives, mothers, sisters, sweethearts. Yes, and this is the very hour they had so often whispered about. If only we could all get together. And the moment of supreme agony, in the unbearable fear of the coming day, the shocking hatred of those who are imposing upon them, the executioners, they're right out in the barrack room in the first voices of open indignation, and in those voices to be forever nameless, the whole army with relief and rapture recognized itself. Thus dawned upon the earth date of destruction of the Romanov monarchy. At a morning conference in the home of the indefatigable Kayurov, where over 40 shop and factory representatives has assembled, a majority spoke for continuing the movement. A majority, but not all. Too bad we cannot establish what majority, but in those hours there was no time for records. Anyway, the decision was belated. The meeting was interrupted by the intoxicating news of the soldiers' insurrection and the opening of the Gauls. Shurkanov kisses all those present. A kiss of Judas, but not, fortunately, to be followed by a crucifixion. One after another, from early morning, the reserve guard battalions mutinied before they were let out of the barracks, continuing that the 4th Company of the Pavlovsky Regiment had begun the day before. In the documents, records, memoirs, this grandiose event of human history has left but a pale, dim imprint. The oppressed masses, even when they rise to the very heights of creative creative action, tell little of themselves and write less, and the overpowering rapture of the victory later erases memory's work. Let us take up that what records there are. The soldiers of the Volunsky regiment were the first to revolt. As early as 7 o'clock in the morning, a battalion commander disturbed Kabalov with a telephone call and this threatening news. The training squad, that is, the unit especially rely on to put down the insurrection, have refused to march out. Its commander was killed or had shot himself in front of the troops. The latter version, by the way, was soon rejected. Having burned their bridges behind them, the Volinsky hastened to broaden the base of the insurrection. In that lay their only salvation. They rushed into the neighboring barracks of the Litovsky and Preobrazhensky regiments, calling out the soldiers, and strikers go from factory to factory, calling out the workers. Sometime after, Kabalov received a report that the Voluvsky regiment had not only refused to surrender their rifles when ordered by the general, but together with the Litovsky and Petrobrazhensky regiments, and what even more alarming, having joined the workers, had wrecked the barracks of the political police. This meant that yesterday's experiment of the Pavlovsky had not been in vain. The insurrection had found leaders and at the same time a plan of action. In the early hours of the 27th, the workers thought the solution of the problem of the insurrection infinitely more distant than it really was. It would be truer to say that they saw the problem as almost entirely ahead of them, when it was really 9/10 behind. The revolutionary pressure of the workers on the barracks fell in with the existing revolutionary movement of the soldiers to the streets. During the day, these two main currents united to wash out, clean, and carry away the walls, the roof, and later the whole groundwork of the old structure. Sugarin was among the first to appear at the Bolshevik headquarters, a rifle in his hands, a cartridge belt over his shoulder, all separated up, all spattered up, but beaming and triumphant. Why shouldn't he be on? Soldiers with rifles and in their hands are coming over to us. In some places, the workers had succeeded in uniting with the soldiers, penetrating the barracks and receiving rifles and cartridges. The Voborsky, together with the most daring of the soldiers, outlined a plan of action: seize the police stations where the armed police have entrenched themselves, disarm all policemen, free the workers held in the police stations, and the political prisoners in the gaols, rout the government troops in the city proper, unite with the still inactive troops and with the workers of other districts. The Moscow regiment joined the uprising, not without an inner struggle. Amazing that there was so little struggle among the regiments. The monarchist command impotently fell away from the soldier mass, and either hid in their cracks or hastened to change its colors. At 2 o'clock, remembers Korolev, a worker from the arsenal factory, when the Moscow regiment marched out, we armed ourselves. We took a revolver and rifle apiece, picked out a group of soldiers who came up. Some of them asked us to take command and tell them what to do, and set out of Chimviskaya Street to shoot up the police station. The workers, it seems, did not have moments trouble telling the soldiers what to do.